Okay, folks, let's talk about this Superman movie, which I had a day off and I took the time to sit down and watch. And I will say, I have seen reviews when it first came out. I even saw some more spoiler-ish reviews where they went over plot points. Thankfully, I had forgotten a lot of them. Uh, so I was able to, you know, still be, I guess, surprised by certain elements. Um, I'll say this spoiler warning, even though I mean clearly the movie is out on DVD now. I had it delivered like 2 weeks ago on Amazon, so um, I can't imagine that if you're a Superman fan that you have not seen this film yet. Um, I will say a lot of the reviews I saw mentioned the just the musical score, and I do. I mean, anything that was not the John Williams score, I found to be very wrongly placed and mostly off-putting. Um, I mean, I'll say this: I'm okay with the song "I'm a Punk Rocker" with Iggy Pop and I forget the name of the band that's officially the band that does that song. Iggy Pop is the one singing, I believe, if I remember correctly, like as a guest on that track, I think. I might be wrong now that I'm thinking about it, but I like that song. I thought that song in the movie was an okay placement. I was not like perturbed with that song in particular, but man, it feels like a really good Superman film when the John Williams score or the take on the John Williams score starts up and you see like a majestic shot of Superman, like when he lifts the building and he's standing there in the dust with the sun behind him, and a few other instances where they use that score. But then they'll use like just weird music that I guess James Gunn is into at other points that is just odd. The one that got me the most was that song that played while Mr. Terrific and Lois Lane are trying to track down Superman. That was like, there's things in this film I really love, and then there's things that just take you out. And I think that's probably the biggest issue I have with this movie is I think, honestly, somebody probably needed to edit James Gunn's more, zany ideas. I think, Galaxy, or Guardians of the Galaxy, I should say, those movies did well with James Gunn at the helm, yes, but I'm sure, with the Marvel Studios brain trust and Kevin Feige and others, they probably did veto some things and, streamline his overall, what he was going to do with those films, and maybe they took out some of the outliers. And in this film, they're all there because no one's editing James Gunn. He's in full control. And I think you see kind of the downside of that in this movie where there are things that are just one-off that don't need to be there, and I feel like they take you out of the movie as a whole. I am a Superman fan. I'm not a fan of the more zany sci-fi side. I mean, I know there are people that like that. Like Dan Slott's current run on Superman Unlimited, or whatever it's called, is very sci-fi zany. The first issue or the second issue, it's like they're setting up a Daily Planet newspaper in Gorilla City, and they show some gorillas dressed in like business casual wear, and it's like, parts. I'm sorry, but to me it just smacks as silly and stupid. I know that Gorilla City is a thing within Marvel Comics, but then having the Daily Planet has set up a newspaper there, and here's the gorillas dressed up as, newspapermen. You've taken it a step too far. I'm sorry. Um, so there are parts in this movie that just took me out of it, and which I don't really think needed to be there, and I think quite honestly would have been taken out if someone else was there to say, hey, why don't we not focus on the monkeys who are internet trolls, because that's honestly just a sight gag and a reason to have monkeys. I'm shaking my head. Or, for instance, the LexCorp. He has that little platoon of people and tents on the beach that are basically housing this machine that lets him into the pocket universe. Why are they all dressed like Newman in Jurassic Park? Why are they all dressed in Hawaiian shirts and shorts? It's visually abrasive. It doesn't move the plot along. There's no reason for it plot-wise. I mean, if you're trying to tell me that they're trying to be inconspicuous with 50 tents, Raptor military personnel, and a whole bunch of people dressed in Hawaiian shirts and shorts, I don't understand. And every time they went to that place and you'd see some guy in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts walking by, it just totally threw me off. Because I'm just looking at this like, why? Why is this there? Who decided to put these people in these outfits? Like, why? It's a stupid sight gag. Every time we went back to that location and they'd show those people, I'd be taking you. It was like being ripped out of the movie. Just like I would just sit there and stare at them and wonder who decided that was a good use of wardrobe and how it fit in. The monkeys in the Pocket Universe, I thought you're telling us that Lex Luthor is a genius. He's cloned Superman. He's created a Pocket Universe. He's like Elon Musk wrapped up with like Joel Osteen. He's doing like TED Talks almost during that final half hour. And you're telling me that instead of just maybe creating an AI to slander Superman, he's literally like housed like 1,000 capuchin monkeys to be typing on computers all day. Like how is that seems like something you'd put in like a 1950s or 60s comic book, not understanding the level of technology that you were dealing with. It doesn't seem like something that a smart, entrepreneurial tech genius would do. I think I'm making that clear, right? Just little things like that threw me off just so badly. I'm unclear as to who Metaphorical's child is. Is that John Johns? Who is that? I don't remember Metamorpho having a child. I'm thinking back through. I mean, I haven't read a lot of Metamorpho comics. He is he's very much like an F-list character. Let's be realistic. But I mean, I've read the Terrifics. I've read other things with him in them, and I do not believe that I ever ran into a green baby. wardrobe that got me more than anything. I also wonder, the guy playing Jimmy Olsen, there was something about his face that struck me as him being like 57, but at the same time he's playing Jimmy Olsen, who we all know to be younger, and then they're also playing him up as some sort of like sex symbol, but then he looks like, I mean, not to say that the actor is ugly, but he just looks, I don't know, there's something about him that just strikes me as like, you look like you're 40 years older than you probably are. And it was, I don't know, that was just so weird. I couldn't wrap my head around that. And then they have, they have the Daily Planet regulars like Kat and I forget the name of the sports writer, but they're just kind of there so that you can be like, those of us that are fans, we can be like, oh, there's Kat, who is apparently there just for cleavage, and there's the sports guy just so we can be like, oh, there's that guy. Otherwise, they're not in there for anything else. You'll have to excuse me, I'm trying to have a drink. My throat was a little dry, and I knew I'd be rambling. Let's see. I did find it a little. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense in today's day and age that you have these people that are almost like cult-like in their following of Lex Luthor, but when you get to the point where there's a black hole opening up, and there's only one guy in that control room that's like, hey, maybe we should turn this off, and everybody else is like, no, we're still following this, weird crazy guy. That just seemed a little off to me. Like, I get it, he's trying to lambast, like, the Trump crowd and those people that are easily shepherded towards certain things by very charismatic people, but there's a fine line there, and I think he crossed it quite a bit, having so many people, happily cheering on the destruction of Superman while literally there's a black hole ripping the planet open, and only one of the 20 people in there seemed concerned. I was also a little surprised by how many times you had people that were clearly in the scope of danger, and they were just standing there. Now I think to an extent it's a way to show Superman saving people and squirrels. But like when the black hole's opening and there's literally a crack in the earth and it's going through Metropolis, and it's going to the next city, and in the next city, what are they doing? It looks like they're having a dinner party, and they're just watching the crack in the earth come towards them. What are you doing? Who in their right mind, if they heard there was a crack in the earth in the city next door, and that it was just ripping through the city, would be like, let's continue this dinner party. I'm sure it will be fine shortly. They cut to that scene where the Daily Planet folks are in Mr. Terrific's ship, and they look down at the next city, and there's some lady like, oh my gosh, it's coming, we can't even get away in time. It's like, what were you doing up until then? Am I supposed to feel bad for this lady? I'd be perfectly fine if that lady fell into a chasm, because apparently she was too stupid to evacuate, and she's literally on the other side of the harbor just watching, utter destruction, and thinks that she should stay there. You had a lot of moments like that, where, like that, when Superman's fighting the kaiju like in his bodega, and he's just going about his day, kind of looking out the shop window at the kaiju that's destroying the neighborhood. Like, what the? I understand. I understand this is supposed to be like a few years into Superman's career, but are you telling me that the citizens are so desensitized and stupid that they're literally just, he's putting the hot dogs on the roller in the bodega while Superman's fighting a monster outside his freaking storefront? What the, like, literally, what is that? I'm sorry, because I'm getting just burnt out on the stupid part. What did you like? Well, as I said, I did like the John Williams score. I thought that when that was used, it was very well used. Was Jor-El, was it just me, or did Jor-El look like Bradley Cooper? At first I thought it was Bradley Cooper. I don't think it was. I think it looked like Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, didn't it? And I don't think it was them. I hope to God it was not them. I thought that was an interesting idea that Superman, had this fond memory of his parents because they sent him with this message, but he had only heard the first part, and sure enough, they were not the heartfelt Kryptonians he thought they were. They were basically Viltrumites from Invincible. That's honestly pretty realistic. I like the robots okay. I thought the Fortress of Solitude looked pretty good. I like Crypto. I think sometimes he was a little too much of an issue, but then they kind of explain that to you, I guess, in showing that he's, Kara's dog, and she's too busy going out and partying and getting drunk on red planets. I honestly did not expect Supergirl to be in this movie. Because, when she walks in at the end, it's like, well, where were you? This entire film has gone on. Superman was missing for, I would assume, a couple days in that pocket universe. The robots got with yeah, by then the robots would have been back up and running. So, did they not, is she not reachable? Did they not send her a distress signal or something? I'm thinking more now, and it's getting me more flustered. It's just like, where, even if she's off on some planet getting drunk, she's Supergirl. She should be able to arrive. And if Crypto's mostly with Superman, why isn't he's not able to train Crypto? What I thought Lois Lane was good. I thought she played it well. She's a very attractive woman. But they didn't sexy her up or anything. It's just that, she's a reporter and they made her mostly down to earth. Sometimes I think they push the Lois Lane as reporter first and, relationship partner to Clark second a little too much. Would Superman be dating someone whose, main thing seems to be trying to get a news story out of him? I don't know. But the first, when they do that whole interview scene, it almost struck me as her being a little shallow, because it's like, well, he's a nice guy, he's doing this for a good reason. And I understand as a reporter, you think you need to grill him, but at the same time, it comes up as a little too, because they're trying to get ahead. Um, but the rest of the movie, she mostly vindicates herself as far as that goes. I thought David Cornsweet did a great job. I had no issues with him. He played the funny parts well. He played the dramatic parts well. Sorry, I didn't think he had a huge amount to do. I will say that. I was honestly a little surprised that his Clark voice was not horribly different from his Superman voice. I didn't think they were both going to be quite as deep as they were. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I thought he did a good job, but at the same time, I've always wanted Lex Luthor to be an older. Nowadays it's like everybody's trying to make him like Mark Zuckerberg. Whether it be the Dawn of Justice or this, they're all skewing young, and I don't know why. I honestly thought Kevin Spacey. I can't tell you how happy I was when he was cast as Lex Luthor for Superman Returns. The downside being that while he looked the part and was very much like a physical representation of what I wanted Lex to be, he then proceeded to just play Gene Hackman. And I've never liked the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor, not because of anything Gene did, but because the character just at the baseline was made out to be just like a sleazy car salesman instead of a like megalomaniac genius. I think all of us that grew up with Batman or Superman the animated series, we see that representation of Lex, and we're always hoping that we get that, and we never quite get there, which is always kind of sad. Like, for instance, Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville. He would have been perfect in this role. I think Mike Rosenbaum has more of a evil like edge to him, and he just plays older than he is. I mean, now he's older, but even on Smallville, he always looked just older and more authoritative than the other actors. Whereas Nicholas Hoult has a little bit of a baby face look to him. And I don't think that served him well. Let's see, Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern. I thought he did a great job, honestly. No issues there. That's exactly what guys should be. I liked how when they're fighting the army forces, some of his constructs are just a hand with a middle finger. That's exactly the kind of stuff that Guy would pull. I know everybody liked Mr. Terrific. I also thought that while I find is he Eddie Cathega? I mean, I know I've seen him in X-Men First Class. I do not know the actor's name, so I apologize. But physically, I've always, Mr. Terrific in the comics is like Olympic athlete, like built, like I almost see him as like a, when he's standing there, I think he should look almost more like a NFL wide receiver or something. Like, they draw him as a stocky dude. And this particular actor, he's a thinner guy. And I think the hair, because he's always got that same haircut, the hair always makes his face seem a little thinner than it is. So, while I think that physically he's not the best representation, I thought he did a good job on everything else. Hawkgirl doesn't have much to do. while she flies at you. I found that to just be like a tad too much, if we're being realistic. Um, I thought Ma and Pa Kent seemed. Did they seem too country to you? I mean, I know they're from Kansas, but Ma Kent seemed a little almost like, I don't know, she came off as like country bumpkin, I think more than they should. You know, his dad came off well with what they had him do, which wasn't a lot, but I think Mom very much came up as country bumpkin, doesn't know what she's doing. And while I know the Kents are supposed to be like this idyllic Kansas family, I don't think they need to be shown as being like, you know, she doesn't know how to use the phone and she's screaming into it when it's on speaker. That's a little silly. You're undermining the character, I think, there. And also, I mean, a nitpick here, but when they do the punk rocker song at the end, and he's watching the home movies, having those same the same actor and actress just with bad wigs, like, dude, just come on. Find two people that don't look horribly dissimilar from these two actors and just put them in there. You don't need to put. I mean, do you think I won't figure it out that it's Ma and Pa Kent with Clark Kent as a baby? It's not like it was David Cornsweet in diapers with a wig, acting like he was 4. Like, I get it. I can make the connection. You don't have to literally put like a 65-year-old man in a black wig and do nothing else to his appearance. And, you know, this is a home movie from 30 years ago. I'm trying not to curse because that was just silly. Anyways, I do, overall, I think I did like the movie. Are there things that I think if they were taken out would make the movie a better movie? Yeah, honestly. Do I think it's a great jumping on point for people that might not be in the lore? I would say probably not. I mean, if you know nothing of these characters, do I think they did enough to like really explain who they are and why they're doing what they're doing, and not like confuse your average just like no idea what's going on person? Honestly, no. You know, there was a lot in this movie. Even if you take it at face value and you don't ask like who's this engineer lady, and oh, is that supposed to be Bizarro or is that supposed to be Superboy? You know, who are these? What's a Green Lantern? I mean, none of that was honestly explained. They do have points of like really obvious, what's it called? I've lost the word. I apologize. I'm getting old. I almost said the word. I almost said deposition, but that's not. There's these points of really obvious, where they're just spewing out backstory, and you know, like when Superman's talking about Kara at the end, and he's like explaining, like, oh, well, she likes to go to red sun planets. This is what sun planets do. I mean, think of who's in that scene. He's in that scene with a robot that's either, you know, Kryptonian in design, or in, you know, or maybe it was part of his ship. The chances of that robot not knowing what a red sun does is probably pretty low. So Superman shouldn't have to say like, oh, the red sun, it lets her get drunk, you know, because it negates my powers. The robot probably knows that. The robot knows to put you in yellow sun. You know, Just those moments where they're just saying something so that the audience knows. Um, there were a few moments when it was really glaring, I think, in this movie. Um, and I mean, for us that know about the lore and the history of these characters, I mean, there are Easter eggs. You know, they have the Hall of Justice, which seems, honestly, I don't know why you would have a Hall of Justice for the three-member Justice Gang as it currently stands in this movie. I mean, they had a huge headquarters with like 85 chairs, and there were three of them. So what's the story there? Why would you have that? And then on the walls of that building inside, there was a mural, and I saw members of the Justice Society. Where are they? Are they in this universe, and we're just not seeing them because it's not time to see them? Are we not seeing them because of something that happened in the past? I don't know. It's not going to be explained to me. Just little weird things like that got me. But this movie has some of that fantastical sci-fi stuff that the early Superman comics are known for, like when they're talking about the hypno glasses, and Superman's glasses are actually hypnotizing you, so you don't see his face. That's very much a 1950s idea, and when you shoehorn it into this stuff, I think a lot of that comes off as a little hokey. Oh yeah, they did have. I was pretty sure they had Superman's Fortress of Solitude in these. I did not know that they had the T-Sphere mobile. And I don't know why anybody would buy an Ultraman figure. That was just like a really unflattering and kind of boring look, wasn't it? The Ultraman look. And I mean, in the end, is it really Ultraman? No, it's not even really Ultraman. It's either their play on Bizarro because he's stupid and has Superman's powers, or it's realistically more in comic accurate. It's more Superboy Connor Kent because he's the clone that Lex makes. But it was none of those things. It was like a amalgamation. I know I've probably spent too much time complaining about this movie and the little things. I think the reason is, it's been so long since we saw Man of Steel. I really liked Man of Steel. There were things in that I would nitpick too, like Jonathan Kent being kind of a, don't save me, don't save the kids. Everybody found that pretty off-putting. But, it's been so long since we got that film that I think everybody was excited to see what this was, and I think James Gunn didn't do himself any favors with the scope, I think, to an extent, because there were a little too many things, and he didn't do himself any favors with those little, like, over-the-top things, like the monkeys and the Hawaiian shirts, and just things that you just look at and you're like, why? Why did you do that? Because now people are going to, I'm going to harp on that, or I'm going to look at that, and it's going to make me, like, hesitant to put my whole self into this film. So, I will be interested to see what they do moving forward. We saw Kara. I thought, from what little we saw of her, I thought it's more in line with the, I know the movie is supposed to be taking off from Tom King's miniseries, where she's more of like a belligerent teenager who doesn't have any parents, and I thought she played that okay. I don't know how that movie will go over. I thought the miniseries was good, but that's because I like Tom King's work. I don't know if you could do a Justice Gang movie. Whoops, sorry. With the characters they've established. They have Maxwell Lord in the movie. You're not gonna do Infinite Crisis anytime soon. You didn't even have Blue Beetle, so you can't do these most defining moments. I just don't know what they're gonna do next. It's like here's this movie, and it's very much not a Superman standalone movie because of the amount of other things crammed into it. But at the same time, did it specifically set up anything as the go-to next step? I don't think it did. So we'll see. So I think I will leave it at that, guys. It's almost getting close to 40 minutes, and I feel like I've been complaining about things for the bulk of that 40 minutes, which I do apologize. I did. Overall, I would say it's a good film. I think what gets me and probably a lot of Superman fans is like if you just did a couple little things here and there, not even changing the overall, not even changing the basics of this film. Nothing that I'm talking about I think would dramatically change the plot or any of the important moments. I'm just saying, like, leave out the silly stuff, focus a little bit better. I think it would be a better movie, and I think it's more disappointing than anything that those little things that probably took people out of it are still there. So that's it. So I will see you guys in the next one, and you have a good day.